How do you feel about physics-based spaceflight? Incredible levels of detail, commanding and guiding your ship, first-person shooter combat, and all complete with a thrilling high-stakes cinematic campaign that harkens back to other space drama RPGs of the past. A space RPG where you can navigate across your ship, leap from the airlock into open space, and burn up in the atmosphere. Wow, I can't believe they let you open this, like, in the middle of space. I mean, this... freaking close to the edge, you can just fall off. Man, it's crazy. It's really, really pretty though.
1 minute later.
Oh shit! Ah!
1 eternity later.
Okay, I guess you kind of fall slow. This is where I contemplate the meaning of life. Oh, my friend's here to save me! This will be great! Basically, everything Starfield planned to be, but with an actually interesting story to tell, and more A-list celebrities than you can throw a stick at. Well, A-list celebrities in 2012, because the game that we're talking about has been in development for a very, very, very long time. Squadron 42 has the potential to be the largest RPG launching in 2026 if it launches. The if is a huge one here, and perhaps the biggest question going into 2026 for this RPG. In it, you will take on the role of a new recruit of the United Empire of the Earth Navy, a group tasked with protecting humanity against both aliens and bandits. And in the gameplay footage we've seen, it looks like you're not very good at your job. In fact, you're just like getting people murdered by aliens. You kind of suck.
Get to the door, seal it. Observation code. Just go. Now. What game was this one?
I guess you are a recruit. So there is that. You're not Henry Cavill or Mark Hamill in this. They're just there. Squadron 42 is a single-player sci-fi adventure that will be heavy on in-ship space combat and first-person sci-fi shooter gameplay in an intense, violent, and absolutely gorgeous universe. For many, the ship-to-ship combat inspired by Wing Commander will be the biggest highlight, but it will also include a deep narrative supported by a mountain of celebrities, including Mark Hamill, Gary Oldman, Gillian Anderson, Mark Strong, Liam Cunningham, Henry Cavill, Andy Serkis, and John Rhys-Davies among them. When, or perhaps even more appropriately, if Squadron 42 launches, not just in 2026, but at all, it'll likely be a deeply cinematic experience. The 1 hour of gameplay we saw back in 2024 had a significant amount of cutscenes. It looked great, but given the game's history, skepticism is warranted. Now, I've actually played a decent amount of the Persistent World version, Star Citizen. The space combat is exceptional, and flying is a lot of fun. They've also made great strides in the UI elements and the FPS portion of the game, but things that are essential to an RPG, like meaningful NPC interactions, those simply do not exist in Star Citizen. So we'll just have to wait and see. But the parts of the RPG things that are really important to the game, we have not seen replicated in Star Citizen. As of right now, it's only planned for PC, but there have also been hints that it may end up on consoles as well. We've been told to expect roughly 50-50 between space combat and, well, being on foot, as we embark on missions from our large capital ship with a mixture of large-scale battles and smaller, more intimate life and death situations with lots of screaming. The game will have a dynamic reputation system that lets you define your character and changes your standings with various NPCs. So basically a faction system. As of right now, we don't have an updated time to complete this game, but back in 2015, it sounded like it was going to be on the shorter and smaller end, taking only about 20 hours. For reference, Expedition 33 was said to have about 30-ish hours, and yes, despite what you've been told, or may have been told, size really does matter here. but as long as those 20 hours are really impactful and like fun and exciting, I think it can still be an enjoyable time. Squadron 42 is a celebrity-filled game that has been in development for what feels like forever. Just you know, about 13 years, in part because of an MMO being built alongside the game. It has been the subject of lawsuits and has more often than not been thought dead. But this time they promise that after nearly $1 billion to build the game and the MMO in the same universe, it will be releasing sometime in 2026. Maybe, possibly. Definitely, maybe, kind of. Back in 2024, Cloud Imperium CEO, the developer of the game, said Squadron 42 would be launching within 2 years. So 2026 would be the end of that time frame. Except that just as recently as a few days ago, the content director for Squadron 42 actually went and, you know, pooped on everyone's parade and just basically cast a little bit of doubt, just enough doubt to make us all start going into a little bit of panic mode for a game that's been in panic mode for over a decade. Because they're not certain that it's going to launch in 2026. In fact, they said the following, quote, "There will be no Squadron 42 presence at CitizenCon Direct this year. That team is heads down. We drew a line in the sand when we said 2026. I don't know that we're gonna make it. I just know that we're going to do every single thing possible to make it. And part of that is not taking time for distraction of CitizenCon." And the immortal words of Lloyd Christmas, so you're saying there's a chance that it won't launch in 2026, because that's kind of what it sounds like. It's not saying that, it's kind of like hedging the bets here. I think we're still most likely gonna see a launch in 2026 because this game has to get out the door. It's been too long. And by the time it launches, it may end up feeling dated. And we've already seen over the last couple years what happens when a game has been in development too long. When you see decisions made a decade before careening with decisions made, you know, in the last 6 months, there's always a little bit of a disconnect. So hopefully we get something complete. Hopefully we get something that feels fresh and new and exciting in 2026. It's since been hinted at again and again throughout 2025 that yes, they're still planning on 2026. I do want to stress here before I let you go that just because those interactions haven't been shown in the MMO counterpart to Squadron 42 doesn't mean they won't be in the single player RPG. What we saw in the footage of the game was on par with some of the better RPGs out there, but then the same has to go the other way. I've played a decent amount of Star Citizen and I was most amazed by the ships, the flights, and how you can kind of just go anywhere and do anything. There was a lot more freedom in that game than I think what we're gonna get with Squadron 42. This single player RPG is looking like it's going to be much more linear than it was with the talk of it being a mission-based game. I feel like this is gonna be kind of like you get taken through this story. It makes me think more along the lines of a Halo, for example, than a Mass Effect. With all that in mind, I have reservations about this game. Pretty big ones, honestly. I can very easily foresee this being an instant classic in a space that is often devoid of, well, good space RPGs. Or I can see it being the next Starfield, but with potentially more disappointment given that this will be the most expensive and longest developed RPG ever. I guess the silver lining here is they don't have a game that they developed beforehand. So there's no expectations except that this game could potentially be the most expensive game ever made. Being convoluted a bit by the fact that they're also making an MMO at the time, but this game is gonna be $1 billion game with the MMO attached to it. That's just insanity. Expectations are going to be huge, though many people may have already forgotten this game existed. And the thing is, that aforementioned empty space, the lack of real competition for those space RPGs, that's all about to change because we have games like the Expanse RPG, the Osiris Reborn, coming from Owlcat potentially as soon as 2027 or 2028, or even more exciting and more imminent, we're gonna have Exodus most likely in 2026. Exodus, the game that is looking a whole lot like the spiritual successor to Mass Effect, being built by a lot of the former devs and former story writers of Mass Effect over at Archetype Entertainment with Wizards of the Coast. And you can see more about games like that, more games coming specifically in 2026 that I'm really excited about in this video right here. My name is Trevor Flynn. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful day. Please don't suck, Squadron 42. Mark Hamill is in this, and Mark Hamill is a national treasure. So is Gary Oldman. He's a national treasure too.